Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My name is Justice Williams, and at 38 years old, I never expected to become a successful software architect with a beautiful home in the most exclusive neighborhood in Seattle. Growing up in a family that dismissed my dreams, I learned to build my own path. For 10 long years, they excluded me from every family gathering without a single call or message. Then one Sunday morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my entire estranged family standing there, staring at my success with wide eyes. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that door, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand your ground with family who only wanted you when you had something to offer. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in a middle-class neighborhood in Minneapolis. Our home looked perfect from the outside, with its neatly trimmed lawn and freshly painted shutters, but inside was a different story. My father, Harold Williams, worked as a factory supervisor at the local manufacturing plant. He ran our household with the same rigid authority he used on the factory floor. Every decision required his approval, and questioning his judgment was considered disrespectful. My mother, Diana, spent her days keeping our home spotless and preparing meals that had to be served precisely when my father returned from work. She was a gentle woman with tired eyes who never found the courage to stand up to my father. In private moments, she would softly encourage my interests. But when my father entered the room, she would immediately fall silent. I was the youngest of 3 children. My sister Amanda, the eldest, was the golden child who could do no wrong in my father's eyes. She mirrored his practical outlook on life and embraced the traditional values he held dear. Every academic achievement or homemaking skill she developed was celebrated with enthusiastic praise. My brother Thomas followed closely in her footsteps, adopting my father's mannerisms and opinions as his own. He became a miniature version of our father, down to the disapproving scowl when something displeased him. Then there was me, the youngest, with interests that never seemed to align with the family vision. From an early age, I was fascinated by technology and computers. While other kids my age were playing sports or watching television, I would spend hours taking apart old electronics just to see how they worked. I would carefully disassemble discarded radios and clocks, studying their circuits and components before attempting to reassemble them. These explorations were met with eye rolls and sighs from my family. My father would often snatch the parts from my hands, saying, "Stop wasting time on this junk and do something useful." The only person who truly saw my potential was my grandfather, Franklin. He lived 2 hours away and visited once a month, always bringing something interesting for me. He worked as an electrical engineer before retirement and recognized the spark of curiosity in my eyes. "That boy has a good mind for solving puzzles," he would tell my parents, who would politely nod and promptly ignore his observations. When I turned 13, my life changed. My grandfather arrived for his monthly visit carrying a large box wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a slightly outdated but functional computer. "This is for you, Justice," he said with a wink. "I have a feeling you will make good use of it." My father scoffed, predicting it would collect dust within a week. But I was ecstatic. That computer became my portal to a new world of possibilities. I spent every spare minute learning to program, starting with simple commands and gradually advancing to more complex code. My bedroom became my sanctuary, where I could escape my father's constant criticism and my siblings' mockery. "Look at the computer geek," Thomas would sneer whenever he passed my room. "Good luck getting a girlfriend when all you do is stare at a screen all day." My mother occasionally peeked into my room, curious about my projects but too intimidated by the technology to ask questions. One evening, she watched me work for several minutes before whispering, "You remind me of your grandfather. He was always building things, too." It was the closest thing to support I received at home. School became my refuge, a place where my interests were not ridiculed but encouraged. My computer science teacher, Mr. Reynolds, recognized my aptitude and gave me additional projects to challenge my skills. In my sophomore year, I created a basic inventory management program for the school library, earning recognition from the principal. When I excitedly shared this news at dinner, my father cut me off. "Computers are for people who cannot work with their hands," he declared. "No son of mine will waste his life typing on a keyboard." The defining moment came during my junior year when I entered the state science fair with a program I had developed to help organize medication schedules for elderly patients. Inspired by my grandfather's struggle to keep track of his numerous prescriptions, I created an application that provided reminders and tracked dosages. The judges were impressed, awarding me first place and a scholarship to a summer coding camp. The local newspaper featured a small article about my victory, which I proudly showed to my family. My father glanced at it briefly before pushing it aside to read the sports section. My sister smirked. "Great, now the whole town knows what a nerd you are." My brother added, "Maybe you can program yourself some friends." My mother offered a quiet, "That's nice, dear," before quickly changing the subject. Despite the lack of support at home, I continued to excel academically. By the time I reached senior year, I had my sights set on studying computer science in college. When college acceptance letters arrived, including one from a prestigious technology institute offering a partial scholarship, my father made his position clear. No practical value in that degree. You should study business or trade school like your brother. On graduation day, as I stood in my cap and gown surrounded by classmates whose families beamed with pride, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would pursue my passion for technology, despite my family's disapproval. Looking back now, that choice set me on the path to where I am today, though the journey would prove far more difficult and lonely than I could have imagined. Stepping onto the college campus that fall felt like entering a new world. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who shared my interests and spoke my language. The partial scholarship covered about half of my tuition, leaving me to figure out the rest on my own. While many of my classmates received financial support from their families, I juggled a full course load with part-time jobs at the campus IT help desk and a local electronics store on weekends. Despite knowing my parents could have helped financially if they wanted to, I never saw a dime from them. My father had always told us he had college funds set aside for each of his children, but when I asked about accessing mine, he changed the subject. I later discovered why. During my freshman orientation, I met Adrian Rodriguez in my Introduction to Programming class. We bonded immediately over our shared enthusiasm for emerging technologies and stayed up late many nights debating the future of software development. Adrian quickly became the brother I wished I had grown up with. Someone who encouraged rather than belittled my ambitions. "We should start our own company someday," Adrian suggested one night as we worked through a particularly challenging assignment. "Build something that changes how people use technology." The idea planted a seed that would eventually grow into our future. My sophomore year brought my first major coding breakthrough. For a class project, I developed an algorithm that significantly improved database search efficiency. My professor was so impressed that he encouraged me to submit it to a student innovation conference. Working through several sleepless nights, I refined the algorithm and prepared my presentation. Professor Walker, who taught advanced programming concepts, took a special interest in my work. Unlike my family, he saw potential in my ideas and pushed me to explore them further. "You have a unique way of approaching problems, Justice," he told me after reviewing my project. "That kind of thinking is rare and valuable." His mentorship gave me the confidence I had never received at home. When I called my parents to share the news about my accepted conference submission, my mother answered. "That sounds nice," she said distractedly. "Your father wants to know if you are still wasting time with those computer classes or if you have switched to something practical yet." I ended the call feeling deflated but more determined than ever to prove myself. The summer after my sophomore year, I landed an internship at TechVision, a prestigious software company known for its innovative products. The position was highly competitive, with hundreds of applicants from across the country. Being selected felt like validation that I was on the right path. The internship offered valuable experience and a modest stipend that helped ease my financial burden. As Christmas approached that year, I decided to return home with news of my accomplishments, hoping they might finally see the value in my chosen field. I arrived bearing gifts purchased with my internship earnings and a heart full of optimism that things might be different this time. The family dinner that night became a turning point in our relationship. As we sat around the table that my mother had decorated with her best holiday linens, I attempted to share my experiences at TechVision and the projects I had worked on. Before I could finish, my father interrupted. "Speaking of money," he announced, looking around the table, We have some exciting news. Amanda is getting married next summer, and we have decided to use Justice's college fund to give her the wedding she deserves." The table fell silent. My sister avoided my gaze, a smug smile playing at the corners of her mouth. My brother Thomas snickered, watching for my reaction. My mother stared down at her plate, silent tears forming in her eyes. But as always, she said nothing in my defense. "My college fund?" I finally managed to ask. "The one you told me I could not access because I chose the wrong major?" "It is our money," my father replied coldly, "and we decide how it is best spent. Amanda's wedding is an investment in her future. Your computer games are not. They are not games," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I am creating software that solves real problems. The company I interned with offered me a position next summer, with pay that probably exceeds what you make at the factory." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had crossed a line. My father's face darkened with anger as he slammed his fist on the table, causing the dishes to rattle. "How dare you speak to me that way in my own house?" he shouted. "If you think you are so much better than us with your fancy computer job, then you have a choice to make. Give up this computer nonsense and get a real education, or do not bother coming home again." Amanda smirked openly now. "Dad is right, Justice. You have always thought you were too good for this family." Thomas nodded in agreement. "Always off in your own little world, instead of being part of the family." I looked to my mother, hoping for some support, but she merely dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, unwilling to take a stand. In that moment, I realized I had been alone in this family all along. Without another word, I stood up from the table, walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, and packed my belongings. Within 20 minutes, I had loaded everything into my used car that I had purchased with my own savings. My mother caught me at the door, her eyes red from crying. "Justice, please," she whispered. "Your father did not mean it. He is just worried about your future." "No, Mom," I replied quietly. "He is worried about control, and I am done letting him control my life." I drove away that night, simultaneously heartbroken and filled with a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, I was completely on my own, with no safety net and no one to please but myself. The road ahead would be difficult, but at least it would be mine to choose. The remaining years of college passed in a blur of classes, late-night study sessions, and multiple jobs. Without family support, I took on additional work hours, sometimes sacrificing sleep to maintain my academic standing. My apartment, a tiny studio off campus, barely fit a bed and desk, but it was mine, paid for with my own earnings. Adrian became my rock during this time, offering both emotional support and practical help. We would split meals to save money and take turns paying for coffee during our all-night coding sessions. "We are investing in our future," he would say when I felt discouraged. "Someday we will look back on these ramen noodle days and laugh." My final semester arrived, bringing with it graduation preparations. I had maintained a 3.9 GPA despite my heavy workload and received multiple job offers from technology companies impressed by my internship work and academic projects. The graduation ceremony approached, and though I sent invitations to my family, I received no response. On graduation day, I scanned the audience for familiar faces as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. Professor Walker cheered loudly from the faculty section, and Adrian and his parents waved enthusiastically from their seats. The empty spaces where my family should have been ached like a physical wound, but I forced myself to smile and hold my head high. After graduation, I accepted a position as a junior software developer at Nexus Technologies, a mid-sized company with a reputation for innovation. The salary, while entry-level, felt like a fortune after years of financial struggle. For the first time, I could afford an apartment without roommates and did not need to count every penny at the grocery store. Adrian landed a job at a different company, but we maintained our dream of starting our own business. We rented a small, two-bedroom apartment together to save money, turning the living room into an impromptu workspace where we could develop our own applications after our day jobs ended. Our first attempt was a productivity app designed to help small businesses manage their inventory more efficiently. We worked tirelessly, fueled by ambition and instant coffee, coding late into the night and through weekends. The initial launch was disappointing, with few downloads and several technical issues we had not anticipated. Money became tight again as we invested our savings into fixing bugs and marketing our product. During this difficult period, I reached a low point and considered reaching out to my family. It had been almost 2 years since our Christmas confrontation, and part of me hoped time might have softened their stance. I called my mother's cell phone, which she answered on the 4th ring. "Justice?" She sounded surprised. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine, Mom," I replied. "I just thought it might be nice to catch up. Maybe I could come for dinner this weekend?" There was a long pause before she responded. "This weekend is not good. Your father." "Well, you know how he is. Let me talk to him and call you back." The return call came 3 days later with an invitation to Sunday dinner. I arrived at the familiar house with cautious optimism and a bottle of wine purchased with my professional salary. The dinner began pleasantly enough, with my mother asking polite questions about my apartment and job. My father remained silent until the main course arrived, watching me with calculating eyes. Amanda and her husband Brian were also present, along with Thomas. The tension in the room was palpable, like a storm brewing on the horizon. "So," my father finally spoke, cutting his meat with precise movements. "Had enough of playing with computers yet? Ready to get a real job?" Before I could respond, Brian chimed in. "Technology jobs are for losers who cannot handle real work. That whole industry is going to crash any day now." "I have a real job," I responded calmly. "One that pays well and has excellent growth potential." Amanda snorted. "Right. Sitting in a cubicle all day. So impressive." The conversation deteriorated from there, with each family member taking turns belittling my career choice. When I mentioned the app Adrian and I were developing, my father laughed outright. "Still living in a fantasy world," he said, shaking his head. "When that fails, do not come asking for money." As dinner concluded, my mother mentioned plans for a family reunion the following month. "It will be at Uncle Steve's lake house. The whole family will be there." "Sounds nice," I replied. "When should I arrive?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother glanced at my father, who cleared his throat. "It is really just for immediate family," he said dismissively. "I am immediate family," I pointed out. "You know what he means," Amanda interjected. "People who are actually part of the family, not just when it is convenient." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Have there been other family gatherings I was not invited to? No one would meet my eyes, confirming my suspicion. Later that week, curiosity drove me to check Amanda's social media profiles, which were public. Scrolling through her photos revealed years of family events, holidays, birthdays, summer barbecues, and annual reunions at the lake house. Events spanning back years, none of which I had been invited to attend. In one particularly painful photo from the previous Christmas, my entire extended family posed in matching sweaters. The caption read, "Complete Family Christmas. So blessed." I had spent that Christmas alone in my apartment, assuming everyone was celebrating separately. The final breaking point came 6 months later when my grandfather passed away. I received the news not from my family but from my grandfather's neighbor, who found my contact information in his address book. I arrived at the funeral to find my family already seated in the front row, a united front of grief that excluded me. After the service, I approached my father to offer condolences, only to be met with a cold stare. "Why are you here?" he asked. "You barely visited him." "That is not true," I replied, stunned by the accusation. "I called him weekly and visited whenever I could. He was proud of my work." "Always about you, is not it?" my father said loudly, drawing attention from nearby mourners. "Cannot even let your grandfather rest in peace without making it about your precious career." Several relatives turned to stare, embarrassment, and pity in their eyes. My mother touched my arm gently, whispering, "Maybe you should go. This is not the time." "When is the time, Mom?" I asked quietly. "When will it ever be the right time for this family to accept me?" She looked away, unwilling or unable to answer. In that moment, standing in the cemetery where we had just buried the one family member who had believed in me, I made my decision. I would no longer seek approval from people incapable of giving it. I would no longer make myself small to fit into their limited vision of success. I walked away that day, not just from the cemetery, but from the painful cycle of rejection and disappointment. I blocked their numbers, removed them from my social media, and focused entirely on building the life and career I wanted. The pain did not disappear overnight, but with each passing month of no contact, the sharp sting faded to a dull ache I could live with. I was 28 years old, completely estranged from my family, but for the first time, I felt truly free to become the person I was meant to be. The year after my complete break from my biological family became the foundation for everything good in my life today. Adrian and I continued refining our business model, learning from our initial failures. Our second application, a secure communication platform for healthcare providers, gained traction slowly but steadily. We named our company Innovative Solutions, working from a tiny rented office space that barely fit our 2 desks. Our breakthrough came unexpectedly when a hospital administrator discovered our app and implemented it across their facility. The success story spread through industry channels, bringing attention from larger healthcare networks. Within 6 months, we had signed contracts with 3 regional hospitals and were hiring our first employees. During this period of professional growth, I attended a tech conference in San Francisco to showcase our platform. While setting up our modest booth between industry giants, I bumped into a woman attempting to navigate the crowded exhibition hall. "Sorry about that," I apologized, helping steady her laptop before it fell. "No worries," she replied with a warm smile. "These places are always packed on opening day." Her name badge identified her as Elaine Carter, Director of Technology Implementation at a national healthcare company. We started talking about the challenges of healthcare software, and what should have been a brief conversation extended through lunch and into the afternoon session we both missed. Elaine combined sharp business acumen with genuine compassion for patient care, qualities that made her exceptional in her field. She asked thoughtful questions about our platform and offered insights that would later prove invaluable to its development. Before the conference ended, we had exchanged numbers and made plans to meet for dinner when we both returned to Seattle. Our first official date took place at a small Italian restaurant near Pike Place Market. The conversation flowed effortlessly for hours, moving from work to books, travel, and eventually to family. When Elaine spoke about her close-knit family in Portland, I shared the abbreviated version of my estrangement. They did not support my career choice, and we grew apart, I explained, not wanting to burden a first date with the full story. Elaine studied me for a moment before responding. "Their loss entirely. Anyone who cannot see your value is not looking properly." 3 months into our relationship, Elaine invited me to her parents' home for Sunday dinner. I accepted with more nervousness than I cared to admit. The experience was nothing like the tense meals of my childhood. Carl and Margaret Carter welcomed me with genuine warmth, asking interested questions about my work and listening attentively to my answers. "So you built a company from scratch?" Carl asked, clearly impressed. "That takes real vision and determination," Margaret added. Elaine mentioned your healthcare application. "What inspired you to focus on that sector?" No one interrupted or dismissed my explanations. No one suggested I should have chosen a different path. The contrast between this dinner and those with my biological family was stark and healing in ways I had not anticipated. As our relationship deepened, so did my connection with the Carter family. They included me in holidays, birthdays, and casual weekend gatherings without hesitation. Margaret sent care packages to our office during busy development cycles, and Carl offered business advice drawn from his years running a successful accounting firm. This was what family support looked like, I realized. Not conditional approval based on conformity, but genuine encouragement of individual paths. Our business continued to grow exponentially. A major healthcare conglomerate approached us about implementing our platform across their 200 facilities nationwide, a contract that would transform our small company into a significant player in healthcare technology. The night we signed the contract, I asked Elaine to marry me on the rooftop of our office building, overlooking the Seattle skyline. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "1,000 times yes." We married the following spring, in a ceremony attended by our closest friends and Elaine's extended family. Adrian served as my best man, delivering a toast that brought tears to my eyes. "To my brother in everything but blood," he said, raising his glass. "Who taught me that family is about who stands beside you when dreams seem impossible." The absence of my biological family was a dull ache beneath the joy of the day, but looking around at the people who had chosen to love and support me, I found myself surprisingly at peace with the void. 2 years into our marriage, Elaine gave birth to our daughter, Lily. Holding that tiny, perfect person in my arms, I made a silent promise that she would never question her worth or feel that her dreams were invalid. She would grow up knowing she was loved unconditionally, exactly as she was. "She has your eyes," Elaine whispered as we watched our daughter sleep. "And hopefully, your determination. And your kindness," I added. "That matters more than anything." Fatherhood shifted something fundamental in my perspective. The pain of my family's rejection no longer dominated my thoughts as it once had. Instead, I focused on building new traditions and memories with my growing family. Carl and Margaret doted on their granddaughter, visiting often and filling her nursery with books and handmade toys. As our company continued to thrive, we moved from our starter home to a house I had once only dreamed about. Set in an exclusive neighborhood with sweeping views of Puget Sound, the modern architecture featured walls of glass that brought nature inside. The spacious rooms provided plenty of space for Lily to explore, and the backyard included a custom playground I designed myself. Occasionally, thoughts of my biological family would surface, especially during major life events. When Innovative Solutions was featured in a national business magazine, I briefly wondered if they had seen the article. When Lily took her first steps, a fleeting sadness passed through me that my parents would never know their granddaughter. But these moments no longer held the power to derail my happiness. With the guidance of a skilled therapist, I had worked through much of my family trauma. "You cannot change their behavior," Dr. Rivera reminded me during our sessions. "You can only change how much power you give it in your life." I focused on building the family culture I had always craved. Our home became a gathering place for friends, colleagues, and Elaine's family. Sunday dinners, movie nights, summer barbecues by the pool, all filled with laughter and genuine connection. This was the legacy I wanted for Lily, not the toxic patterns of my childhood. By my mid-30s, I had achieved more success than I could have imagined during those difficult college years. Innovative Solutions had grown to employ over 200 people, with offices in 3 cities. Adrian and I had remained close friends and business partners, navigating the challenges of rapid growth with our shared vision intact. Elaine had joined the company as Chief Operating Officer, bringing her exceptional organizational skills to our expanding enterprise. Life felt complete in a way I had never expected. I had created the family I needed rather than remaining trapped in the one I was born into. The journey had been painful at times, but looking back, I could see how each rejection had pushed me toward building something better. I had stopped checking my biological family's social media years ago, no longer needing to witness the gatherings I was excluded from. Which is why, on that sunny Sunday morning in April, the last people I expected to see on my doorstep were the very ones who had made it clear I was no longer part of their family. The doorbell chimed through our home at precisely 9:15 on a Sunday morning. Elaine had taken Lily to her weekly swimming lesson, leaving me to enjoy a rare quiet morning with coffee and the newspaper on our terrace, overlooking the water. The unexpected sound pulled me from my peaceful reverie. I made my way through the house, coffee cup still in hand, assuming it might be a package delivery or perhaps neighbors inviting us to a community event. Nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me when I pulled open the heavy wooden door. There they stood, like apparitions from another lifetime. My father, now with significantly more gray in his hair, stood at the front of the group, his posture stiff but his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Beside him, my mother clutched her purse with white knuckles, her eyes immediately filling with tears upon seeing me. Behind them stood Amanda and her husband Brian, along with 2 children I had never met who must be my niece and nephew. Thomas and a woman who I assumed was his wife completed the tableau, hanging slightly back from the others. For a moment, no one spoke. I could see their eyes taking in my appearance, my home, the obvious markers of my success. I had changed significantly from the young man who had walked away 10 years ago. The tailored casual clothes I wore even on weekends, the confident posture, the subtle signs of wealth I no longer needed to hide, all told a story that clearly surprised them. "Justice," my father finally broke the silence, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "You have done well for yourself." His eyes traveled past me to the soaring entry hall with its modern chandelier and art collection, Very well indeed. My mother stepped forward, arms outstretched as though to embrace me, but stopped short when I did not move to meet her. "You look wonderful, son," she said through tears. "We have missed you so much." Behind them, Amanda adjusted her designer handbag, a poor imitation of the authentic brand I recognized from Elaine's collection. "Nice place," she commented with forced casualness. "We have been trying to find you for ages." The absurdity of that statement almost made me laugh. Anyone who wanted to find me could have done so with minimal effort. My company was well known in the tech industry, and I had maintained the same cell phone number for years. "How surprising to see you all," I said evenly, my voice calm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "It has been a decade since we last spoke." "May we come in?" my father asked, an unusual note of deference in his voice. "We would like to catch up." I hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. "Please, come in." As they filed past me into the entryway, I felt Elaine's presence before I saw her. She had returned early from Lily's lesson and now stood at the entrance to the living room, her protective instincts clearly engaged as she assessed the situation. I gave her a subtle nod to indicate I was okay, and she moved to stand beside me, taking my free hand in silent support. "This is my wife, Elaine," I introduced her. "Elaine, this is my family." "It is nice to finally meet you," Elaine said with perfect politeness, though the emphasis on finally was not lost on anyone. I led them through to our main living area, where floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the water view beyond. My father let out a low whistle at the sight, while Amanda and Brian exchanged meaningful glances. The children, a boy and girl who appeared to be around 8 and 10, stared wide-eyed at the infinity pool visible on the terrace. "Please, sit down," I offered, gesturing to the sectional sofa. "Can I get anyone coffee or water?" After serving beverages and making introductions to the family members I had never met, an awkward silence descended on the room. My father cleared his throat several times before speaking. "We have missed you at family gatherings, Justice," he said, the statement so contrary to reality that I had to work to keep my expression neutral. "It has been too long." "Yes," Amanda added with artificial warmth. "The kids have heard so much about their Uncle Justice. We wanted them to meet you." I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "That is interesting, considering I was explicitly uninvited from family gatherings for years." Thomas shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "That was all a misunderstanding. We assumed you were too busy with your career to attend." "A misunderstanding," I repeated flatly. "I see." My mother reached across the coffee table as if to touch my hand, but stopped when I did not extend it toward her. "We have so much to catch up on," she said. "Your lovely home, your wife. Do you have children?" Before I could answer, the patio door slid open and Lily ran in, still damp from her swimming lesson. "Daddy, I swam all the way across the pool today." She threw herself into my arms, her 5-year-old enthusiasm impossible to resist. "That is amazing, sweetheart," I told her, genuine joy breaking through my guarded demeanor. "I am so proud of you." My mother gasped softly at the sight of her granddaughter, while my father stared with undisguised shock. Amanda's expression tightened noticeably. "Lily, these are some relatives who came to visit," I explained carefully. "Can you say hello?" Always friendly, Lily waved at the strangers before Elaine suggested she go upstairs to change out of her swimsuit. As she skipped away, my father leaned forward with newfound interest. "Beautiful home you have here, Justice. Must have cost a fortune." "We have been fortunate," I acknowledged simply. "Very fortunate," Brian commented, his eyes continuing to survey the room and its expensive furnishings. "Technology must be paying better than I thought." What followed was a painfully transparent tour of our home at my father's request. As we moved through each space, the comments became increasingly focused on material aspects: the imported marble in the kitchen, the home theater system, the view from the primary bedroom suite. With each new revelation of our comfortable lifestyle, the atmosphere shifted subtly, with my family members exchanging glances I remembered all too well from childhood. They were reassessing me, but not as a person worthy of their affection, rather as a potential resource. When we returned to the living room, my father finally broached what was clearly the real purpose of their visit. He settled heavily into an armchair and adopted a serious expression I recognized from childhood discussions about money. "The reason we wanted to reconnect, son, is that the family has fallen on some difficult times lately." And there it was, the truth behind this sudden desire to find me after a decade of silence. "The factory closed last year," he continued. "Outsourced everything to Mexico. After 30 years of service, they let us all go with barely any severance." Amanda jumped in, and Brian's business venture did not work out as planned. The investment group pulled their funding. "I have had some financial setbacks as well," Thomas added vaguely, his eyes not meeting mine. My mother reached for my hand again, this time making contact. "We have tried everything, Justice, but with your father's unemployment and the mortgage, we are in danger of losing the house." "What Thomas means by setbacks is that he has a gambling problem," Amanda said sharply. $30,000 in debt to people you do not want to owe money to. Thomas glared at his sister. "At least I am not the one who maxed out 5 credit cards on designer clothes while my husband was losing our savings." "That is enough," my father snapped before turning back to me. "The point is, Justice, we need help. A loan to get us back on our feet. Family helps family." The irony of that final statement hung in the air between us as I processed what was happening. After 10 years without a single call, message, or invitation, here they were, sitting in my living room asking for money. Not because they missed me or regretted their treatment of me, but because they had discovered I had something they needed. I felt Elaine's hand squeeze mine gently, offering strength and support for whatever response I chose to give. The room fell silent as everyone waited for my answer, the real purpose of their visit now fully exposed. I sat quietly for a long moment, allowing the weight of their request to settle in the room. 10 years of absence, of exclusion, of treating me as if I did not exist, and now they appeared on my doorstep with hands outstretched. The bitter irony was almost too much to bear. Memories cascaded through my mind. The Christmas dinner where they announced using my college fund for Amanda's wedding, the countless family gatherings I discovered through social media posts, the funeral where my own father publicly humiliated me, and a lifetime of dismissing my choices and dreams. "Before I respond to your request," I said finally, my voice calm and measured, "I would like to understand something. Why now? Why reach out after 10 years of complete silence?" My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Like I said, we have been trying to find you." "That is not true," I replied evenly. "I have had the same phone number for 15 years. My company is well known in the tech industry. A simple internet search would have led you directly to me." "We thought you wanted space," my mother offered weakly. "We were respecting your privacy." "Respecting my privacy," I repeated. "Is that what you call excluding me from every family gathering for the past decade? Was that respect?" Amanda interjected, her voice taking on the defensive tone I remembered so well. "You are the one who walked away from this family, Justice. You abandoned us because you thought you were too good for us." "Is that really how you remember it?" I asked, genuinely curious about the narrative they had constructed, because I remember being told my choice of career was worthless. I remember being told not to come home unless I gave up my dreams. I remember being uninvited from family events while everyone pretended I did not exist. Thomas leaned forward. "You always had to be different, always had to prove you were smarter than the rest of us. You could have stayed connected if you wanted to." I took a deep breath, centering myself before responding. Then I stood and walked to a cabinet near the bookshelf, removing a folder I had not looked at in years. From it, I extracted several printed pages and returned to my seat. "This is a Facebook post from Christmas, 7 years ago," I said, laying the first page on the coffee table. The photograph showed my entire family, including extended relatives, wearing matching sweaters around a Christmas tree. The caption read, "Complete Williams Family Christmas. Nothing better than having everyone together." I placed another printed page beside it. "This is from Amanda's social media 3 months after I last saw you all. It shows the annual family reunion at Uncle Steve's lake house." I pointed to a comment below the image where my cousin had written, "Too bad Justice is too stuck up to join family events anymore," and my father had replied, "His choice. We are better off without the attitude." One by one, I laid out evidence of the deliberate exclusion I had experienced, including text message screenshots, email printouts, and more social media posts. My mother's face crumpled with each new item, while my father's complexion grew increasingly pale. "I kept these for years," I explained, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder to never again allow myself to be convinced that my perception of reality was wrong. "You did not lose touch with me. You chose to cut me out because I did not conform to your expectations." The room fell into stunned silence. Brian stared at the floor while Amanda's face flushed with embarrassment. Thomas looked genuinely uncomfortable for the first time since arriving. "I built this life without any support from my family of origin," I continued, gesturing to the home around us. "When I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college, none of you offered help. When Adrian and I were living on ramen noodles trying to launch our first app, none of you showed interest. When I got married, none of you were there to celebrate with me." I stood again, moving to the large family photo displayed prominently on our wall. It showed Elaine, Lily, and me, along with Elaine's parents, Adrian, and several close friends who had become our chosen family. "This is my family now," I said softly. "People who support each other through difficulties, not just appear when there is something to gain. People who celebrate successes together rather than belittling them. People who love unconditionally, not based on conformity to their expectations." Elaine, who had remained silent throughout this exchange, now stood and moved to my side. "Would anyone like more coffee?" she asked, providing a moment of reprieve from the intensifying conversation. When she returned with a fresh pot, my father cleared his throat, clearly ready to redirect the conversation back to their financial needs. "We understand we have made mistakes, Justice, and we are truly sorry. But right now, we need help, and you are clearly in a position to provide it." "Family helps family," Amanda added, echoing my father's earlier sentiment. "Despite everything, we are still blood." I considered their words carefully before responding. "You are right about one thing. Family should help family. But help comes in many forms, and giving money is often the least effective when there are deeper issues at play." "What are you saying?" my father asked, tension creeping into his voice. "I am saying that I will not be giving you money," I replied calmly. "But I am willing to offer something more valuable." The shift in atmosphere was immediate. My father's face darkened, and Amanda's expression turned from hopeful to outraged. "For you, Dad, I can provide connections to several manufacturing companies looking for experienced supervisors. For Thomas, I know a financial advisor who specializes in debt management and recovery. For Amanda and Brian, I can offer consultations with our business development team to assess viable career options." "We did not come here for career advice," my father snapped, the familiar anger returning to his voice. "We need actual help." "This is actual help," I countered. "Giving you money would be a temporary solution to a deeper problem. I am offering sustainable assistance that could genuinely improve your situations." "So that is it?" Thomas interjected. "You sit in your mansion and lecture us about sustainability while we lose our homes?" "After everything we did for you growing up," my father added, his voice rising. "This is how you repay us? By showing off your wealth and refusing to help when we need it most?" Amanda stood abruptly. I knew this was a mistake. He has always been selfish, only thinking about himself. As their anger escalated, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the raised voices. Seeing her innocent face peering down at this unpleasant scene, I made a swift decision. "I think it is time for you to leave," I said firmly. "If you would like to discuss the help I have offered, you can contact me when you have calmed down. But I will not expose my daughter to this kind of behavior in her own home." "Your daughter," my mother whispered, looking up at Lily with tears in her eyes. "My granddaughter, who I never even knew existed." "That was your choice, Mom," I replied gently. "All of you chose to exclude me from your lives, and by extension you excluded yourselves from mine." My father stood, his face flushed with anger. "We should never have come. Obviously, success has made you even more arrogant than before." "No, Dad," I corrected him. "Success did not change me. It simply gave me the freedom to stop accepting treatment I never deserved in the first place." Amanda gathered her children, who looked confused by the tension they could clearly sense. "Come on, kids. Your uncle does not want us here." "That is not what I said," I clarified, maintaining my calm. "I said I would not tolerate disrespect in my home, especially in front of my child." As they moved toward the door, my mother hung back, her expression torn between family loyalty and genuine regret. "Justice, please," she began, but my father cut her off. "Diana now," he commanded, the familiar control mechanism that had defined my childhood. To my surprise, she did not immediately obey. "Harold, maybe we should consider what Justice is offering. The job connections could really help." "We are leaving," he insisted, "and we will not be back. If he wants to turn his back on his family when we need him, that is his choice." "That is your choice, Dad," I replied. "It always has been." I stood in the doorway as they filed out to their cars, maintaining my composure despite the churning emotions inside me. As my mother passed, she pressed a small piece of paper into my hand, whispering, "My new cell number, please." When they were gone, I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. Elaine approached, wrapping her arms around me without a word. We stood that way for several moments before Lily came down the stairs, her small face concerned. "Daddy, why were those people angry?" she asked. I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people have different ideas about how to solve problems, and that can make them frustrated. Are they coming back?" I glanced at the paper my mother had given me, tucking it into my pocket. "I do not know. But what matters is that you, me, and Mommy are here for each other, always." She nodded solemnly before asking if she could play in the backyard, the drama already fading from her young mind. As she skipped away, I turned to Elaine, who had witnessed the entire confrontation with steady support. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, surprised to realize it was true. "For the first time in my life, I think I really am." After the front door closed behind my estranged family, our home felt unusually quiet, as if the air itself needed time to settle after the emotional storm that had just passed through. Elaine, Lily, and I sat together on the living room sofa. Lily nestled between us, asking occasional questions about the angry visitors that we answered with age-appropriate honesty. "Were those people part of our family?" Lily asked, her innocent question cutting straight to the heart of what had troubled me for years. I considered her question carefully before answering. "They are related to me by blood, yes. But family is about more than just being related. Family is about people who love and support each other through good times and difficult times. Like how Grandma and Grandpa Carter always bring me books," she asked, referring to Elaine's parents who had embraced me as their own. "Exactly like that," I confirmed. "And like how Uncle Adrian helps you build robot toys, or how Mommy and I are always here for you no matter what." "I like our family," Lily declared confidently before asking if she could go play with her toys, the complexities of adult relationships already fading from her young mind. As she bounded up the stairs, Elaine turned to me with concern in her eyes. "How are you really feeling?" I took a deep breath, surprised by the sense of calm that had settled over me. Oddly enough, I feel relieved. For years, there was a part of me that wondered if I had made the right choice by walking away. Today confirmed that I did. "Their timing was certainly revealing," Elaine observed dryly. 10 years of silence until they needed something, I agreed. It was almost therapeutic to see their motivations laid so bare. As evening approached, Adrian called to check in about a work matter, but quickly sensed something was off in my voice. "Everything okay? You sound stressed." When I explained the day's events, he immediately offered to come over. An hour later, he arrived with takeout from our favorite restaurant and a bottle of the whiskey we saved for significant occasions. After Lily was tucked into bed, the three of us sat on the terrace, the Seattle skyline twinkling in the distance. "So they just showed up after a decade asking for money?" Adrian shook his head in disbelief. "And they genuinely expected you would just write them a check?" "I think in their minds, my success obligated me to help them," I explained, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "As if the years of rejection and exclusion never happened." "Blood means nothing without actions behind it," Adrian stated firmly. "You gave them options for real help, which is more than most would have done." Elaine, always the most insightful among us, added, "What strikes me most is how they still tried to control the narrative. Even faced with evidence, they twisted things to make you the villain for not giving them what they wanted." "Classic manipulation tactics," I agreed. "The same ones I grew up with. The difference is that now I can recognize them for what they are." As the night deepened and the conversation continued, I felt something shifting within me, a final release of the lingering hope that someday my biological family would see me for who I truly was. That fantasy had been completely dispelled by reality, and in its place grew a profound appreciation for the family I had chosen and built. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I had never experienced before. Over breakfast, I shared my idea with Elaine. "I want to start a scholarship fund," I explained as I poured coffee. For technology students who lack family support, full tuition plus living expenses. Elaine's face lit up with understanding. Taking your pain and creating something beautiful from it. Exactly. So many talented young people give up on their dreams because they do not have the financial or emotional support they need. I want to be the person I needed when I was struggling. That afternoon, I called our company's legal team to begin setting up the Justice Williams Technology Scholarship Foundation. The irony of my name serving as a perfect description for the fund's purpose was not lost on me. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in establishing the foundation, working with educational institutions to identify students with both aptitude and need. The work became a form of therapy, transforming the lingering pain of rejection into a force for positive change. My mother texted me twice, brief messages asking how I was doing, which I answered politely but briefly. She mentioned that my father had taken one of the job connections I had offered, though he would never admit it was your help. It was a small step perhaps, but I held no expectations for genuine reconciliation. Some wounds run too deep, and some patterns are too ingrained to change. As summer approached, we planned a gathering at our home, what had become an annual tradition with our chosen family. Elaine's parents flew in from Portland. Adrian and his new girlfriend arrived, bearing homemade desserts, and colleagues who had become close friends filled our backyard with laughter and conversation. Standing at the grill, watching Lily play with the other children while the adults engaged in animated discussions around the pool, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. This was what family should be, a community of people who celebrated each other's successes, supported each other through challenges, and showed up consistently without conditions or expectations. Later that evening, after most guests had departed and only our closest circle remained, we gathered on the terrace with glasses of wine. The conversation turned reflective as Elaine's father, Carl, asked about the Scholarship Foundation. "The first recipients will start this fall," I explained. 5 students with extraordinary potential but limited support systems. "You are giving them more than education, Margaret," Elaine's mother observed. "You are giving them permission to believe in themselves when no one else does." "Sometimes that is all someone needs," I replied. "One person who sees them clearly and believes in their vision." Adrian raised his glass in a toast. "To building the life you want, not accepting the one you were given." As glasses clinked and conversation flowed, I gazed out at the twinkling lights of Seattle and reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The path had not been what I expected, with more pain and rejection than anyone should experience from those who should love them most. Yet that difficult road had led me to this moment of profound contentment, surrounded by people who chose to be in my life and whom I chose in return. The definition of family had been rewritten in my life, not as a fixed entity determined by birth, but as a living, growing community built on mutual respect, genuine care, and consistent presence. The painful truth was that sometimes blood relatives cannot be part of that community, not because we do not wish them to be, but because their presence comes with conditions that diminish rather than enhance our lives. I thought briefly of my father, mother, siblings, and the nieces and nephews I would likely never know. There was sadness in that reality, but no longer the sharp pain of rejection. I had stopped seeking approval from those incapable of giving it, and focused instead on nurturing relationships with those who saw and appreciated my authentic self. As the evening wound down and our closest friends prepared to leave, Lily sleepily asked if we could have another gathering soon. "I love when our family is all together," she said. Her innocent understanding of family, encompassing all the people who showed her love and attention. "We will, sweetheart," I promised. "Very soon." Later, putting Lily to bed, she asked one final question that captured the essence of what I had learned through my journey. "Daddy, do you think the angry people will ever be happy?" I considered her question carefully. "I hope so, Lily. Everyone deserves happiness. But happiness comes from appreciating what you have, not always wanting what others have. I am happy with our family," she declared before drifting off to sleep. "So am I," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "More than you could possibly know." In the end, the greatest lesson I learned was that family is not an obligation to be endured, but a blessing to be cherished. True family lifts you up rather than tears you down, celebrates your uniqueness rather than demanding conformity, and stands with you through both struggles and triumphs. Sometimes we find that family in unexpected places, with people who have no biological connection to us but connect with our hearts and souls in ways that transcend blood. If there is one thing I would share with anyone struggling with family rejection, it is this: you deserve to be loved for exactly who you are. Never compromise your dreams or diminish your light to please those who cannot see your value. Build your life with people who recognize your worth, and in time, the pain of rejection will be replaced by the joy of genuine belonging. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more reflections on life's challenging but transformative journeys. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the family we create is far more powerful than the one we were born into. Until next time, take care of yourselves and those who truly deserve a place in your life.